What if society treated women the same way it often treats men? Not just in obvious ways like jobs or pay, but in something deeper. In how emotions are expected to be handled. In how vulnerability is judged. In how strength is defined. Think about that for a second, because for a long time, many cultures have quietly taught men one simple psychological rule. Handle your problems alone, and don't show too much emotion while doing it. Now here's the interesting part. What if that same expectation was suddenly applied to women across society? What if women were expected to suppress emotional expression the way men often are? What if asking for emotional support was seen as weakness? And what if being openly vulnerable was socially discouraged? This isn't just a social question. It's actually a fascinating psychological thought experiment, because the way society treats emotions shapes how our brains learn to process them. And this is where things get interesting. Human emotions aren't just feelings, they're signals. From a psychological perspective, emotions help regulate stress, maintain social bonds, and process experiences. Because the way society treats emotions shapes how our brains learn to process them. And this is where things get interesting. Human emotions aren't just feelings, they're signals. From a psychological perspective, emotions help regulate stress, maintain social bonds, and process experiences. Emotional suppression doesn't actually make emotions disappear. Research in behavioral psychology shows that suppressing emotions often increases physiological stress. Heart rate rises, cortisol levels increase, and the brain keeps replaying unresolved emotional experiences. In other words, the emotion doesn't go away, it just goes underground. And if you look at many psychological studies on gender and emotional norms, you start to see a pattern. Men are statistically less likely to seek emotional support. They are also more likely to internalize stress, and psychologists believe social expectations play a major role in shaping that behavior. Now imagine flipping that expectation. Imagine a society where women were consistently told, handle it yourself. Don't talk about it too much. Stay strong. Don't be emotional. Over time, something subtle would begin to change, because the brain adapts to social feedback. If emotional expression is discouraged long enough, people start training their brains to hide vulnerability, not just from others, but sometimes even from themselves. Think about everyday life for a moment. Imagine someone having a difficult day at work. Maybe their boss criticized them. Maybe they feel overwhelmed or unappreciated. Right now, many people process that stress by talking to a friend, a partner, or family member. That simple act of sharing emotions actually helps the brain regulate stress. But if someone believes they're supposed to just deal with it, something different happens. They stay quiet. They carry the stress internally, and later that night, when the house is quiet and the phone is down, their brain starts replaying the day. Overthinking kicks in. Now here's another example. Think about relationships. When something hurts emotionally, open communication usually helps resolve it. But if someone feels pressure to appear emotionally invulnerable, they may avoid those conversations entirely, and unresolved emotions can slowly turn into distance. Not because people don't care, but because they've been conditioned to hide what they feel. And this is where the psychological insight appears. The human brain isn't designed to process emotions in isolation. We evolved as social beings. Connection helps regulate the nervous system. Sharing experiences helps the brain make sense of difficult feelings, but cultural expectations can quietly reshape how people handle those emotions. So the real question behind this thought experiment isn't about men or women, it's about emotional norms. What happens when society encourages emotional openness, and what happens when it discourages it? Because the truth is, the human mind responds powerfully to the rules it believes it has to follow. And once those rules become internalized, they can shape behavior for an entire lifetime. Think about that for a second. How much of the way we handle emotions is actually natural, and how much of it is something we quietly learn from the world around us? The psychology of human behavior often reveals something surprising. Many of the patterns we think are just personality are actually responses to social expectations. And when those expectations change, behavior often changes too, which means understanding the mind isn't just about understanding individuals. Sometimes it's about understanding the invisible rules that shape how people think, feel, and cope with the world. If you're curious about how the mind really works, consider subscribing for more videos exploring the psychology behind everyday human behavior.